Thanks, Nina. So, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Eneko, and I work at ASTE Marine Research Institute of the Basque country, which is located between Spain and France. This is my area of study, the Bay of Biscay. I don't know if you are familiar with, and I will talk about a seasonal fishery which is quite important in the area, that is targeting northern albacore, or Thunnus alalunga. That's an important fishery, especially for commercial fisheries. And in this case, for large-scale fisheries are operating all around the Bay of Biscay using live bait, and some others, a little bit smaller, but still larger than 15-meter vessels, also use trolling lines. In any case, I'm not going to talk about those large-scale vessels, but about smaller ones that are also operating with trolling lines. And I'm going to talk about them because we ask about 50 skippers using small-scale vessels, and all of them are concerning about potential interactions with those, which are more familiar for you, I guess, the recreational fishing boats that are also targeting northern albacore with trolling lines. So we know that there is potential interaction, but we don't have data, at least, to demonstrate that that interaction exists. So from the data collection perspective, we have different data sources for commercial fisheries, especially for large-scale fisheries, as you can see in the right hand of the figure. But if we focus on the small vessels and we want to get geospatial information, then the data is much more limited, because in our region, there is not mandatory to use geospatial localization devices in the smallest vessels. Now the new control regulation from Europe will come, but in any case, in any case, can you hear me? I guess it's okay. Yeah, good. No worries, that's fine. Yeah. So we have no, that's why it doesn't work.
The book works. We can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay. But it's an echo for me. Anyway, we have 26 different vessels that are providing voluntarily geospatial information, and we can get quite a good resolution spatial data from those vessels. In any case, we cannot compare this with recreational fishing because we don't have geospatial data for recreationals, as I'm going to talk later on. So in any case, what we are going to do in this study is to put a grid of using csquares of 0.1 latitude and longitude size, let's say, and we are going to work with fishing trip hours. So hours at sea that are spending targeting albacore by the small-scale vessels. Just to give you some background about the fisheries from small-scale vessels, the most important fishery takes place mostly in summer time in our region. As you can see in the left-hand side, these are the number of trips, so they are mostly concentrated during July and August. But if we go for the different base harbors, then there is quite a big difference. There are some harbors showing really high activity and some others not so much. That's also another kind of example of those kind voluntary skippers that are providing high-resolution spatial information, but we cannot use this AIS class B information for making comparisons with recreational fishing, but we can do this. And that's merging by csquares, so a little bit broader scale that may be a little bit better or easier to compare than with the recreationals. So this way we can see which is the hotspot, or at least which area is the place where most of the activity is concentrated for the albacore season. So I'm talking about the small-scale fisheries, the commercial ones. Now I'm going to move into the recreational fishing. That's a data collection program that is continuously carrying out since the last 5 years. And we use different methods. We did an off-site phone survey in 2023. Then we also make a screening, so that means go to all these different locations that you can see there in the map and count vessels that are operating. So, and we also make face-to-face questionnaires two fishers that are coming back to harbor in the boats. So we ask them for the profile, for the targeting a species, the effort, the catch. But of course, they normally don't give us information about where did they get the fish. So what we can do is at least to get information about when they are leaving the harbor and when they are coming back. And we can also assume that they are making a day trip maximums, because the recreational fishing is not, at least it's not common to go for larger than 1 day. I'm not going to spend much time explaining how we then make the estimates for the fishing effort, because I have another talk 15 minutes later in the other room just talking about that methodology. But just to let you know, that's the long name. It's probability proportional to size sampling based two-stage cluster design. So basically, it's a model to make estimates from our sampling data, and we also provide to the model some known auxiliary values. So, for example, the eligible days and the weekend days. So the number of weekend days that we know that there is potential activity, but there is no sampling at all. During the weekends, we don't sample, but there is activity. So these numbers can also help to, let's say, calibrate a little bit the model. In the same way, also the total number of fishers that reported at least one albacore from the phone survey is also redistributed by region based on the census data of the habitants. So this way, we can get kind of an estimate of the fishing effort for each harbor. And as you can see, in the top size is the number of samples, the number of countings. It's strongly driving the estimates. But in any case, forget about this. This is just like the first example or first output of the estimates. But we need to compare this to the small-scale fisheries. So how we do that? That's an exercise, and that's a first idea. We first, let's say, we first normalize the data to avoid the inflation of the highest uncertainty values. I'm not going through the much details on here. If is there anyone that is interested in the methodology, then please come to me or write to me. I will be here during the week, and we can then talk a little bit more into detail. But the point is, we know that the vessels are operating at least 6 nautical miles away from the shoreline, and that they can go away, but let's say from a certain distance of 30 nautical miles at maximum. So we can actually redistribute this estimated fishing effort of the harbor to the csquares that can reach during a day. So that's basically what we did. And sorry, I forget also that the only restriction they have, the recreational fishers, is that they have to respect 500 meters away from the commercial vessels. That's almost nothing. I mean, it's 500 meters is quite close. But anyway, in that sense, for this csquare scale, it can be overlapped. So that's what we obtain, let's say, redistributing the estimated fishing effort from the harbors into the map. So this way we can see which are the areas in which most of the effort is concentrated from the recreational fisheries. So now, remember the other map that I showed you about the small-scale fisheries. And if we rescale, considering the size of the different fleets, because the small-scale fishery and the recreational fishing fleet is not exactly the same size. So we rescale everything, and we build a potential spatial interaction index that goes from 0 to 1. So 0 would mean that one of the two fleets is absent in a certain csquare, and 1 would be that there is potential activity of both recreational fishing and small-scale commercial fishery. So this way, this is not a real interaction map. That's an important thing. It's a potential interaction map. So we don't know whether they are fighting to each other because they don't respect this 500-meter distance and that they are fighting for the same fish, or if they are just fishing in the same csquare, one from one side and the others from the other. But at least we know now that the potential interaction is occurring, especially in that hotspot that you can see in the center of the area. So that's like an approach to at least provide some data or some evidence of the potential interaction between the recreational fishing and the small-scale fisheries. So there is something that is previously expected, but it was not demonstrated. So now at least we can put some data and some evidence into a map and go to the stakeholders or managers and say, okay, look, this is the area that you could at least consider, and also we could also take into consideration those harbors that are most important ones or most active ones, both from the perspective of the commercial fisheries and for the recreational fisheries. Of course, the geospatial data will remain limited because we don't have a lot of information from that, so it's, of course, estimates, and it's an approach. So we can at least focus on the, let's say, reference harbors, or those harbors in which we know in advance that there is higher activity, both from the commercial or the recreational side. And we also have the new control regulation in Europe that is coming, and that probably will provide higher resolution geospatial information, both from the small-scale fisheries and from the recreational fishing. So that will allow us to make more robust catch and effort estimates in the near future. And of course, we will need some awareness plans, because as far as we know, neither the small-scale fisheries skippers nor the recreational fishers are happy with what's going on with this control regulation. But in any case, that's part of the game, and it's just the first idea of showing the potential interactions. So thanks for your attention, and if you have any thoughts.